to us to bring our minds together because we all come with different responsibilities and challenges in life. But when we come together for a common purpose, we remind each other of all that's in nature is interdependent and everything has its own responsibility to make sure that life goes forward. And so today we are gathered here for responsibilities as well. So that's what the meaning of the opening address is about, in short. I'm going to ask now Roberta or Diane. Roberta's going to come forward. Roberta Hill's going to say a poem for us.
Try not to forget. My glasses off so I can read. What I'm going to read today is a poem by Jimmy Edgar. He was here at the Mush Hole from 1950 to 1960. He's Anishinaabe from Scugog Island. And when people say get over the Mush Hole or get over residential school, when you listen to his words, you're going to realize how lasting the impacts are. They're forever. So this is what he's given me permission to read today. There is a place I know far, far away where we get mush and milk 3 times a day. Oh, Canada, do you think we should be proud? Oh, Canada, to sing your name out loud? The forgotten ones you scattered in the wind have come back to haunt you now, my friend. Oh, Canada, your home upon my home. I grew up in the school of racial genocide, self-hate and shame, always walking by my side. You changed my tongue, tried to chain my mind, to turn me into a different kind. Oh, Canada, your home upon my home. Many scars covered over, many here to stay, on our children now and those who are on the way. Many struggle each day, trying to find the door to hear grandmother's voice as we did before. Oh, Canada, your home upon my home. The so-called men of God who gave us care, many were perverts, and I'm sure you were aware. They preyed on us, both girls and boys, fulfilling their fantasies, but left us destroyed. May you hang your head in shame, O Canada. So many brothers gone now, so many sisters too, who were chained in the mind when you broke our families, you sealed our fate. We hope for our children that it's not too late, O Canada, your home upon my home. Reconcile with you I cannot do. You have everything. How your wealth grew. What do we have? Broken treaties, church crap, many little children who will never come back? Oh, Canada, your home upon my home. When I came home, I knew no one there. 10 years in the mush hole, but a lifetime of despair. Still I struggle each day, trying to find the door, to speak in grandmother's voice as we did before. May your God forgive you, O Canada, for I cannot. Jimmy Edgar.
Thank you, Roberta, for sharing that really powerful story and that experience, so well expressed. So Scano Sogoyo, Rebecca Nigyazo, Daskawan, Niwa Gwenzade. Rebecca Jameson's my name. I'm of the Tuscarora Nation and welcoming you here today for this very important event. So let's begin first with acknowledging the survivors who are with us, who with their strength have brought forward the truth that for over 100 years was intentionally hidden from public knowledge. The truth of the painful experiences and the death of many innocent Indigenous children, the truth of cultural genocide for individuals, families, and communities, and the impacts that today we as Indigenous people continue to live with and address. As Justice Murray Sinclair, chairman of the TRC Commission, stated, education is what got us into this mess, and education is what's going to get us out. And I can bear witness to this, that that's true. Six Nations Polytechnic, or SNP, where I serve as the president and the CEO, is an Indigenous-led and governed place of learning that is reclaiming education for our purposes. At SNP, we offer high school, where Rowan attends, as well as post-secondary education and training to Ongohoe, the people of Six Nations, and others who are committed to Ongohoe ways of knowing and being. To do this, we devote efforts to revitalization, recovery, and restoration, and the continued development of Ongohoe knowledge and languages. Our efforts also focus on reconciliation by sharing the truth, learning together with others while building respectful relationships across cultures, because we all share this land. Our efforts show that education can indeed be a powerful tool for good and not destruction. Today we're here to begin the search for more truth that will not only extend to more education and awareness, and will hopefully bring some closure for families and communities who have been missing their loved ones for so long. Phase 1 of the search of the grounds for missing children begins today, after much advanced work being done by the Survivors Secretariat, and the Joint Task Force. As Charlene Bunbury, survivor, has stated, this is heavy work that needs to be done. As survivors, we take comfort in knowing that this sacred work is being done in a good way with community members' participation. We have been clear that the search must be survivor-led and community involved. And so it is for this police investigation. With the leadership of the survivors, a mapping exercise has been done and available archival records have been reviewed. With 500 acres to search, the first phase of the search will focus on the lands near the Mohawk Institute building. Community members and police service members have been trained on how to operate the ground penetrating radar, and all work is being monitored by the Survivor Secretariat's Indigenous Human Rights Monitor, Dr. Beverly Jacobs of Six Nations, and the Haudenosaunee Anishinaabe Cultural Monitors. Appropriate ceremonies have been conducted and will continue to be conducted as guided by the cultural monitors and the traditional knowledge and ceremonial people. Following our speakers this morning, there will be a Q&A, and after the Q&A, the media will be allowed for a short time to film and photograph the search, and I'll provide more details on that a little bit later. At this time, I'm going to ask Dawn Hill, one of the residential school survivors, to come forward. Please, Dawn.
Thank you very much. That poem was really sad. It took me a while to get over that, and I've read it many times. My name is Dawn Hill. I'm from Six Nations, Mohawk Turtle Clan. My sister and I, Roberta, who read the poem, were in the mush hole here from 1957 to 1961. And I really want to say, I have notes here, but I don't really want to read the notes because I want to say what's in my heart and in my head. And I would really like to thank our counselors and our chief for initiating and starting this push forward. Because without that support, I think it would have taken us longer to get to this stage. So I have to commend Wendy Johnson, Melba Thomas, counselors, and Chief Mark Hill, and all of the people who helped to coordinate all of the things for us as residential school survivors. Like, you know, we talked to the coroner, we talked to the OPP criminal investigators. They showed us some different things about maps that you'll, where did they go? Oh, right here. The maps, and more than that, they showed us how different things work, the different materials that they would have to use to find the missing children. And I think that's the most important thing, that they kept us informed. And we learned a lot. And I have to say that for everybody here. We learned a lot, things that we didn't know before, and it's moved forward. And I know I had people in the community say, when are they going to get started? It's been so long. And if they knew the processes that had to take place before we even got to this stage today, I think that would have satisfied their, curiosity for one, or, that curiosity about what's going on. And even though you put out information, not everybody reads the information. And so I'm hoping that with this media conference today, that more people understand how all of that stuff works. And I'm really grateful that we were kept in the loop. And the Survivor Secretariat, Kimberly, they brought in their experts. Laura, who, you know, they coordinate all the information, pass it on to us so that we are well informed. And sometimes people will ask me things in the community, or friends or whatever, and I can only tell them what I know. I know there's things that we weren't supposed to say to people, you know, about the investigation. And it's hard not to say things sometimes. But I always say, well, I'm not an expert at this. I don't know everything. We'll just have to wait and see, or you'll have to read what comes out in the news communications from council. So I'm really glad that that type of stuff is happening and that we're finally going to get some justice for those children. Because we've all heard stories, like I didn't know anything growing up, and my sister and I, we didn't talk about anything about the mush hole. But as everybody came out and started talking about stories, and everybody had kind of like similar stories, you know, behind the mush hole, this person, they saw this or they saw that. And so all of those stories are now coming to the forefront. And I think that's why they're starting where they are today, because a lot of those stories focus on the boys' side, around those barns and buildings there. And basically that's kind of what I know about some of this stuff, but I'm really glad to be kept informed. And I learned a lot about you know, things that needed to happen, and they're starting to open up other things again. And the coroner, he was a very interesting man. Oh, there he is. My sister kind of passed out when we had our one ceremony, she just didn't eat. So she had low blood sugar, and I have to tell you this because we always have a good sense of humor. And so she kind of passed out on the ground, and when she came to, she saw like things were kind of dark and whatever, so she kind of closed her eyes again, and when she opened them up, there was the coroner looking at her. And she said to herself, "Am I dead?" And that's where I'm going to leave it, because like as a group, we always have a sense of humor. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Mark now.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Thank you for your courage and for getting up here today, and thank you to all of the survivors for bearing witness. And as Dawn has said, this is sacred work, and we ask that the reporters respect this by not taking photos of individuals without their consent, as this is a place that is sacred and where we need to be respectful of our ceremony and give time for grieving, prayers, and traditions. We have several survivors who are joining Dawn at the front and sitting with us, who have been leading this work. We also have Chief Mark Hill with us of Six Nations Grand River Elected Council, Kimberly Murray, Executive Lead of the Survivors Secretariat, then Chief Darren Montour, Chief of the Six Nations Police. They will also be speaking this morning. And I also want to acknowledge that we have Chief Rob Davis, Chief of the Brantford City Police, who's also providing support to the task force, and Dr. Heyer, is it? Yes, now that I know what you are. So all of these people are helping, and many members of the OPP as well. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Chief Mark Hill to come forward and share some words with us. Chief.
Thank you, Inyawa, Rebecca, as well as to Robbie and her poem that she read, as well as Dawn and her words that she had to offer. Skanot Sego, and good day, everyone. I would like to begin by acknowledging first and foremost all of our survivors here today. And I just want to take a pause there and just share even my experience in working with each of them. You know, it's been a challenging time as chief, you know, over these last 2 years. But they have really inspired me to continue this important work, not just what we have to do here at the Mohawk Institute, but in other areas and other files within our community, in order to be, you know, progressive and to keep our community moving forward in a positive direction. So want to really thank and say nyawa to each of them for continuing to inspire me and to continue this important work. I also would like to acknowledge all of our members of the Secretariat, as well as the members of the Police Task Force, and as well as all of the other First Nations communities who had children attend the Mohawk Institute. And also, too, want to acknowledge Councillor Wendy Johnson, as well as Councillor Melba Thomas, and the rest of our leadership on the elected council, as well as the Haudenosaunee chiefs and clan mothers. This work, again, is very important, as was mentioned multiple times this morning. And again, would also like to welcome all of the guests that are present here with us today. We are gathered here to officially announce the first step in our journey to bring our children home. For the past few months, the Survivors Secretariat has been working tirelessly in collaboration with multiple agencies across many jurisdictions. We have finally made it to this day where we are ready to begin the search. Survivors have been telling us for years the stories of what happened to them in these so-called schools. This investigation and the important work that comes with it is for survivors and is led by survivors. For many, this day has been long awaited, but also brings with it a stark reminder of the atrocities that were committed against our people in these institutions. The coming months will be definitely difficult for Six Nations, and our focus now is on preparing our community for the potential findings of the search and providing adequate mental health and crisis support to those who may need it. Although the Secretariat is an apolitical organization and independent of the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council, we are committed to continuing to advocate for adequate supports from all levels of government, including the release of records and equitable funding. The Mohawk Institute was the oldest and longest running residential school in Canada. Children stolen from their families from many different communities were forced to attend this school behind us in which we're standing. The scope and depth of this investigation is unique. Again, it's very uncharted territory, and this must be reflected in the financial support received from Ontario and the Canadian government. I call upon them to make good upon their commitments to reconciliation by expeditiously supporting this work in whatever capacity is needed. In closing, I want to thank everyone involved in this investigation for their commitment to attaining justice for our survivors, our communities, as well for bringing our lost children home. The months ahead will be difficult, but this work will allow our community to begin the process of healing together and place the spirits of our lost children at rest. Again, it's been a very challenging time today. And it was difficult for me, even outside of these words. I want to be like Don as well and try to speak from what I'm feeling. And it's tough. This has been very tough on our community. And where we got to go from here is going to be even more difficult. So we want to continue again. We've made it loud and clear. I know it's been challenging for me at times to walk that fine line of remaining apolitical and independent. So we don't have political interference. We felt that even with Kimberly as the executive lead of the Secretariat, the police task force, we have to do this properly. And I'm glad Don touched a little bit on the process on what we had to do in order to get to today, especially around the cultural pieces and the ceremonial pieces that needed to take place in order for this work to then get to the next step. So again, just really want to say nyawa to all of the survivors, everyone who is here today, our leadership, and really look forward to how and where we go from this point on. Again, our main focus now, as we know, we're still very much in a pandemic. We still have a lot to do within community and protecting the health and safety of all of our members. But we need to, again, make sure that we are supporting all of our members in this time of need. So we will be looking to all governments, again, for adequate funding, especially around mental health. We know even with the impacts of COVID in mental health and what that has had on general public. And so we will be doing our work in our due diligence to make sure that we see that through with all levels of government in that engagement. So again, just want to say nyawa and thank you for being with us today and look forward to our time during the Q&A session. Nyawa.
Thank you, Chief Hill, for those words. And now I'd like to invite Kimberly Murray, the executive lead of the Survivor Secretariat, to come forward and share her remarks with us.
Sego, Seguego, Skinagoa, Kimberly Murray, Yungats, Ganye Gahaga, Ne, Gana Satage, Wakwaho. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Kimberly Murray. First off, I want to say nawe to Rowan for delivering the Ohondo Gary Watgetke and starting us in a good way and bringing our minds together as one. As I said, I'm Kimberly Murray, and I have the great, enormous privilege and honor to work with the Survivor Secretariat as the executive lead. As Dawn noted in her opening remarks, the Secretariat is an organization created by survivors for survivors to gather and share the truth, toske, truth, to share the truth about what happened over the 136 years that the Mohawk Institute was in operation. Both Rebecca and Dawn touched on the work that has happened leading up to this important day. And I want to add to what was shared. First, I cannot stress enough the importance of listening to survivors and hearing their truths that they have to share about the children that were here one day and then gone the next, never to be seen again. The survivors are the ones that heard the whispered truths about where the babies and the children are buried. They are the ones that know what these lands looked like decades ago and where the many different structures were located. We must honor them and listen to their words. Modern technology and fancy machines and devices that you're going to see can help us uncover the truth, but they can never replace the first-hand knowledge of our people. Those who were here and are here with us today, they are our witnesses. Before we could start the GPR search today, the police task force assisted us by laying out the grids that will be followed by the searchers. As noted, we have trained community members to operate the machines, and we have 2 teams on site today. We have paired Six Nations police members with community members to operate the machines. The search will go all week, and the data collected from the search will be uploaded and backed up on secure servers every day. We are following the best practices guidelines that were released by the Canadian Archaeological Association earlier this summer. We will be sending the data for analysis to experts in this area. Once we have a final report, we will release our findings to the community and survivors and then to the general public. This is just the beginning of our search. Over the winter months, we will be working to prepare the lands that will be searched in the spring and to train further community members to assist on the ground. A complete search plan will be finalized as we ready ourselves to search the rest of the 500 acres that were associated with the Mohawk Institute. I want to speak briefly about the records. It is of vital importance that community take ownership of the records. It does not help us if records are housed at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, if we cannot have access to them. It is no help to us if the records that are in possession of the province of Ontario are sitting in the archives of Ontario. It does not help us if records that can help us are sitting in boxes in the office of the Chief Coroner or the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs. No one can analyze and assess the records more quickly and accurately than the community themselves. The community lived through this attack on them. They do not need, nor have they asked, for the government to review records on their behalf. The time has come for institutions to turn over all the records to communities now. No more hiding behind colonial laws and MOUs to buy time so that you can have a sneak peek at what the records will show. Survivors want and need to recover their lost family members and friends. There is simply no time for this nonsense of holding on to records. They must be released immediately. Moving forward, we want to let survivors and their families know that we will be holding 3 gatherings over the next 6 months. We will be connecting with people through survivor organizations, community leadership, and by way of our website and newsletters. People can sign up to receive the newsletter on our website or by calling us. We want to hear from anyone that wishes to speak to us. I thank you again for your interest in this sacred work. It is long overdue. And I want to remind everybody that this is a death investigation. We again ask that you respect the direction of the media relations staff, the security, and the police task force as you approach the search area that you'll be led to. Please do not cross the barriers or the areas that have been taped off. Finally, I want to acknowledge this group of people. I want to acknowledge the survivors that are here with us and those who will be watching and reading your stories. We honor you, we honor your courage, and we honor your leadership and your resolve to uncovering the truth about what happened at the Mohawk Institute. Nawe, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kimberly. I would now like to call upon Chief Darren Montour, Chief of the Six Nations, please, to give us some remarks. Darren?
Thank you, Rebecca. Can everyone hear me in the back? Okay. Just to introduce myself, my name is Darren Montour. I am Mohawk Wolf Clan from Six Nations of the Grand River, and I am from Six Nations, born and raised there. So good morning, everybody, and I would also like to acknowledge these ladies and gentlemen sitting here. This is the reason that we are here, and we have a big task ahead of us to do for them. So, back on July 21st of this year, the survivors of the Mohawk Institute provided me a letter stating they had endured physical, mental, and sexual abuse. They also brought forward allegations of staff participation in the deaths of fellow students during their time here. As a result, I formally requested the assistance of the Ontario Provincial Police and the Brantford Police Service to assist the Six Nations Police Service to investigate these allegations. This investigation is a survivor-led initiative. Since that time, a joint services team of well-trained and dedicated officers has been assembled to investigate the heinous allegations that these strong and courageous people have endured and carried with them. We undertake this arduous task for them and for their families. The police have been assisted and guided by the Survivors Secretariat, which is a fully dedicated to finding the lost children and bringing to light the atrocities that occurred within those walls. Together, we will work tirelessly to find the missing children who did not come home. I personally want to express my utmost appreciation and gratitude to my colleagues, Chief Robert Davis from the Brantford Police Service and Commissioner Tom Creek from the OPP for their continued assistance and support. Going forward, we are reminded that we are searching for children, the Creator's most precious gift to all of us. It is unimaginable the grief and sorrow faced by families from all Indigenous communities in this country when their children did not return home. Today marks the start of the ground search of this institute. This will be a long and laborious investigation full of emotion and heartbreaking results. But this is long overdue and must be done to allow our communities to heal. We will find them and we will bring them home. Every child matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Montour. So this concludes our speeches, and just before we open the floor to the press for questions, I'd like to cover a bit of housekeeping matters. If you haven't, for the media, if you haven't already contacted Mary Lou Mintram, I don't know where Mary Lou is. You need to do that. Oh, there she is, right there. Okay, over there. Okay, there she is over at the table. Okay. She has an ongoing list of individuals who are registered to take photos and videos of the ground. After the Q&A, groups will be escorted by the security and police to the grounds where the search is happening. And you'll be permitted to take photographs and film the search for a short period of time. As Kimberly mentioned, we ask that you be mindful of the barricades, the tape, or the markings on the ground, as all of these items should not be moved or touched, nor should you go beyond those areas. You'll be given the opportunity for one-on-one interviews with those that have spoken and with the survivors who are here today. So please speak with Mary Lou or Katie, I don't know who Katie is, there's Katie, to schedule those interviews. These interviews can take place at the front steps of the building, but not at the search grounds. And we do have another portable mic here that we will open now for the Q&A period. If there are any questions, you can move forward to the mic.
Hi there, Donna Sound, CTV National News. Thank you, survivors. It's great to be here. I mean, you know what I mean. I'm hard to say. I'm Ojibwe. So my question is, what is the protocol for if and when something is found in the ground, like, you know, bones?
Who would like to respond? Okay. Go ahead,
Do I
Kimberly.
need to do anything? Is this on? I'm good. Okay. Thank you for the question. It's a really big question and an important one. As I mentioned in my speaking notes about the gatherings, that is one of the things that we want to have discussions with survivors and the various communities that Chief Hill mentioned are impacted by the Mohawk Institute to put those protocols in place. So I can tell you that we do not have the protocol in place right now because we have over 20 communities that we have to consult with. And this is a question that is happening across the country. We have been in contact and received communications from the survivors of Shingwak that are addressing this issue right now because they've done a part of their search, and we're dealing and working with survivors in other communities with very different cultures. You know, we have Haudenosaunee people, we have Anishinaabe people, we have Inuit children that attended the Mohawk Institute. So there's a lot of dialogue that needs to happen to put our protocol in place. And that will happen over the winter months and part of the work of the Secretariat. And Don, did you want to add anything?
No, I don't want to add anything, no, because you've already addressed it. And I think that is very it is very important that those children, like the people doing the ceremony, understand, I guess, what the children went through and the fact that we want to honor their spirit. And because we have had people say, who understand that type of stuff, that there are bodies here, that there are spirits here, and they want to move on. And I don't know if anybody understands all of that, but I know in our Native culture, and especially in my family, we really agree with all of that, that there are spirits, that there are these things that maybe most people don't understand, but they need to be addressed in order for those children that might be here or that probably are here to move on.
Okay, thank you, Don. Thank you, Kimberly. Any other questions?
Excuse me, Vincent Baum with the Expositor. Thank you for inviting me here today. There was a mention about records, so I've got a two-part question. Are we looking for records from the provincial and federal government, and what would those records might address? What might they say? What are we looking for? And I guess the second question would be, what has the provincial and federal government said about the records? Have they said no? Have they said, what, if anything, have they said in terms of releasing those records? Thank you.
I think that's probably a question for you, Kimberly, but can I ask you to come to the mic? They're having some challenges with the taking the photos that they need. So if you could come to the mic, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vincent, for the question. So maybe I'll give you a little a little 101 about records before I answer the question in full. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission collected 5 million records during the span of the work that it did. 5 million records were given to the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. If you go to the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation's public website, only 1 million records are available to the public to access. When you go in those 1 million records and you look for Mohawk Institute records, there are 500 records that we can access. A record is a unique record, has about 30 pages in it. We have gone through all those records and we've gathered what we can from those records to help us with the search that we're doing and to identify the children that died in the school. There are 14,000 records at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation that we do not have access to yet, and we are trying to get access to those records through an MOU. Now, are those all the records? No, they're not. We know that the TRC did not collect all the records from the federal government. We know that the TRC did not collect all the records from the Anglican Church. And we certainly know that the TRC did not collect the records that are from the New England Company, which had involvement with this particular residential school. The New England Company is in England. We need to get those records. So there's a lot of records that are still out there that we need to obtain. Vincent, you asked about the provincial records. I don't know if Chief Hill, because he penned a letter recently to the province identifying the role that the provincial government had in residential schools. I just want to remind everybody that the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement was an agreement between the federal government, the churches, and the survivors. The only requirement legally under the settlement agreement was on the federal government and the churches to provide records. There was no requirement for the provinces or any other institution to provide records. But we know there are records. We know that there are death certificates. We know that there are other records in relation to hospitals. We know that there are records in relation to sanatoriums where children were sent and never came back to the school and died in those sanatoriums. So those are all records that we need to get into the Ontario archives to get. Have they told us no? No, they haven't told us no. But there's a massive amount of records that we have to get. And the Survivor Secretariat's been working and consulting with No History on how we can get in there and what we can obtain. And so we will be working on that over the winter. I just want to be clear. When it comes to the death records, there was a recent newspaper article that said that Ontario is the leader. I personally wrote the letter from the TRC to all the provinces asking for death certificates. That was about 8 years ago. So here we are, and we still do not have the death certificates. They're still sitting with the province of Ontario. So I don't, in my mind, see that as leadership. They did not respond to the TRC when the letter was sent, and now they're only responding now. So there are those records. I'm told, Chief Hill, I think you said 1,900 records of death certificates. We need to look at those. We don't need my good friend Dr. Heyer looking at them. We don't need Indigenous Affairs looking at them. The Secretariat and the community needs to look at them because they know who their people are. They know which kids went to this school. They know the names. The bureaucrats don't know those names. So those are the type of records that we're looking for.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead, please.
Lisa Shing from CBC News. Chief Mark Hill, you talked about funding being an important piece of this. Are you able to detail what funding was made available to start this search, and also more specifically, what kind of funding you're looking for going forward?
Okay, can you address that up here, Chief, please?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. Just before I answer your question, I want to just take a step back and also acknowledge Rowan. I know I had missed Rowan in my earlier comments, and I think it's just important to recognize our young people in having the opportunity to speak our languages and learn our languages, which our survivors did not. So I just wanted to also acknowledge Rowan for his good words in speaking this morning, as well as all of our young people in our community. To answer your question, so to date, there'll be a further announcement forthcoming in relation to Canada in the substantial amount in which we are working out further details in terms of how we started this work. The equitable piece in which I've written to forward, as well as the province, obviously the province of Ontario, is in relation to equitable funding. Obviously $400,000 over the 3 years is not equitable funding nor substantial in order to do this important work. work. So, you know, as we've maneuvered through these days, we've also, in relation to also get started, our elected council initially also made a $1 million start, you know, with hopefully obviously the reimbursement back from the Secretariat once we've secured funding from both levels of government. So obviously that was very substantial in order to start this work, to get this work started. But again, you know, we need to continue to hold all levels of government, you know, accountable to where we got to go with this work. And obviously, at this point in time, you know, we're not receiving the funding to date that we need in order to continue this important work over the years. As mentioned before, there's close to roughly 500 acres to be searched. And so again, you know, we are and will continue to advocate and have these conversations with both levels of government so that we can at least look to, again, equitable funding and what that means to the Mohawk Institute. Yeah.
Excuse me, Chief. My follow-up is for you, so you may want to stay here. Okay. Yeah, just on the funding piece again. Hi, my name is Mohan Hamidi. I'm with the Canadian Press. Over the summer, the federal government has announced several initiatives, especially regarding like the mental health for Indigenous communities, and also for some funding some search efforts like on penetrating radars, machines, and other things. How do you do you think that is what has been announced is sufficient enough to help your community and other communities in, you know, conducting this work? Because like today I'm hearing from you that you have two groundbreaking penetrating radar machines. Is this enough? Is this what you really hope for? And if not, what specifically do you want the federal government and the Ontario government to provide you with to conduct this in an efficient and good way?
Well, first off, thank you for your question. I guess really to start, to me, it's never really enough, right? Especially in terms of what has been committed, in terms of, you know, what our survivors have went through, and our community continues to still go through, especially in relation to intergenerational trauma and everything that still happens within our families. In relation to mental health, I don't see that as enough, and it's hard to compare communities because we know globally mental health is an issue. Obviously, you know, as we approach into post-pandemic and so forth. But to answer your question, I would say that no, it's never enough. We're always looking for ways to get creative in how we can, you know, work with government in partnership and collaborations to, again, get substantial amounts of funding to do this important work. But in order for us to do this work, we have to have meaningful conversations and dialogue. You know, governments talk about reconciliation, and in fact, I think I've been on the record multiple times saying I don't even know what that word means anymore. Because it's been thrown around in these past 5 years like so loosely with no action, concrete action behind that word. And so that really starts with conversation and dialogue. That starts with building relationships, maintaining relationships, and you know that's exactly what we want to do here at Six Nations. It's unfortunate that, you know, even with Ontario, that they have not been able to provide us yet to date with the necessary funding that we need. However, we are going to still continue to you know, advocate and push, assert pressure to Ontario and Canada for the necessary funding needed, not just in relation to the search, but also to you know, what you've mentioned in relation to mental health, as well as, again, all the impacts that it has caused within our community. So again, there's much work to continue. I don't think it's ever enough, but mind you, we will either way continue to do what we got to do to continue protecting our health and safety of all of our members. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, next question.
Hi there, I'm Kate McCullough with the Hamilton Spectator. Thanks very much for inviting us here today. My question is actually for Dr. Heyer. He's willing? Okay, there we go. I just wonder if you could respond to Kimberly Murray's comments about the province holding on to records and the need for the community to have access to those records.
Yeah, I can speak for the Office of the Chief Coroner. More broadly, the province has other aspects that Kimberly's talked about. So the Office of the Chief Coroner, when we've been engaged in discussions and spending time with the survivors, and thank you so much for teaching me and for allowing me to dialogue with you. We've learned so much, and we're looking backwards at the approaches that we took through the death investigation system in Ontario to determine if we had and we know we didn't use the lens or think about necessarily when we found or we were involved with people being found buried in different parts of the province, the consideration as to their location being in the area of a residential school. And so that has been a very, it's a horrible thing to recognize that we didn't do that, but we're going back into our files and looking to determine if they were within the area of residential schools. And then we will work together with the survivors, together with the communities, to help to understand the significance of those and determine if additional investigation or other considerations need to be made related to those particular findings.
Go ahead, Vincent. Okay. I think you're okay.
I didn't want to be rude and take up too much time. With respect to the death investigations, there was a death or human remains were found in Brantford recently within the last year, and I'm sorry, I just can't pinpoint the date. Is there an update on that particular story? Is there any information that can come out that you can share with us today with respect to the remains that were found? I believe it was Glenwood Drive, if I'm not mistaken, in Brantford, which is near Mohawk Park, which is within the area that presumably could happen. Can anybody help me with that one?
I don't know, is there anyone able to respond to that, Dr. Heyer?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. And we are involved in the recovery of an individual that was found buried in the proximity, not directly on the 500 acres, but in the proximity of the Mohawk Institute. And we are carefully evaluating the circumstances and painstakingly working together with experts to recover the individual. And that recovery is near complete. And then we will be doing further examination of the individual to try to understand the circumstances in greater clarity. We have been working together to keep the survivors aware and updated on what work we've been doing, and again seeking their input. We have been honored by the fact that we've had participation from the Haudenosaunee Development Institute, Six Nations Archaeology area, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, as well as the Cultural Monitor and the Human Rights Monitor from the Secretariat, all contributing and helping us to work together in the most effective way, in the most respectful way, to fully understand who the individual is to the best of our ability, and where the individual rose and came from. So that work is continuing and progressing along.
Any further questions? Did you have a question? No? Okay. Okay, back to Vincent.
I'm wondering if you can share with us, do you know the age of the individual involved? And can you tell us the gender of the individual involved?
At this point, we do not know the gender, and the initial preliminary examination of some of the person's remains suggested that the individual is an adolescent, so under the age of 14, but then adolescent being over the age of 10 to 11, so somewhere around the lower teens years is the initial investigation or examination findings that we have. Again, we'll do further detailed evaluation of the remainder of the individual to have a full understanding in a thorough way with experts involved.
If there are no further questions, then I think we're ready to, Kim, I need some instructions in terms of how people are going to be guided. Can you provide that? Mary Lou is the individual who keeps track of everyone who has the right, who has the, are on the list for photographs and so on. So she's in the green jacket. That's Mary Lou. Yes.
Good morning. I have spoken with many of you already. I have registered interviews and schedules for different groups to actually go into the back. So I'll just kindly repeat it really quickly. There's a few of us on our team. We have Denny, who, if you can give us a little wave, thank you. And also, sorry, the name is Katie, thank you, who's also going to be able to help with the organization. So for Group A, what is going to happen in your respective groups, we will have them meet at the edge of the end of the left side of the building, and we'll be escorted to the back.